The third god in the group of creator gods, the gods of the four elements, is the god Enki, the god of water. Then he became the god of water and earth due to the link between water and earth. As a continuation to the dominance of the male revolution over the goddess mother, the earth, the goddess, Kai, was the mother of Enki. Then she turned into, and maybe gave birth to, the goddess Ninki, Lady of the Earth, one of his wife's titles, and he came to dominate and became due to the water and his deep origins in creation and his ability to maneuver if he faced a stone. Enki became the god of wisdom, trickery, intelligence, and knowledge, then the god of magic and medicine, and thus this god became the lord of all life. Although he disappears behind the authority of his brother Enlil, or the authority of Anu, his father, but he has the authority of vibrant life and creation and formation, as if he inherited inwardly all the powers of the gods. His city, Eridu, was the oldest of the Sumerian cities in its antiquity and was located on the Arabian Gulf coast. It seemed as if the rain god was in northern Iraq, Samarra Halaf. So this god took the personality of the father god, and once civilization moved south, the personality of the sun god appeared in the water god, Enki, in Eridu, which is the second culture calculate after Halaf. And if Enki's relationship with the god Apsu in Babylonian legends is clear where he is the son of Apsu, the god of deep water, this does not appear in this way in Sumerian legends because Apsu does not appear as a god, but appears as a place because the name of Enki's temple, Apsu, means temple of the depths. But there seems to be a direct relationship between Tammuz and Apsu, where the god, Tammuz, Apsu, the obedient son of deep water appears, although he is the direct son of the god Enki. As for his wife, her maiden name Damgalnuna, Makina, is the wife of the earth and heaven, and she is in Sumerian, Mak, the bigger. And she is actually his partner, or the accompanying permanent beloved woman to him, Ninhursag, is Ninki, heir to Ki, and holder of 13 titles. Enki lives in the Apsu, deep water under the crust of the earth, and is visited by his mother, who is Namo, and she is the first Sumerian goddess. And this matter puzzles us because the actual mother of Enki is Ki. But as soon as we know that the goddess Namo is the mother of all gods, she is necessarily the mother of Enki, but she is the closest to him because they are water gods. The image of the god Enki appears in deep water, as if in a room like a submarine. Enki's secret number was 40, and it is a number that has its sanctity in life, death, and prophecy. And Enki had a minister named Isimo, or Ismod, and he is called in Akkadian, Osmo, or Osumo, and he is a god with a human head, and has 2 faces, and his picture appears like that. As for the symbols of the god Enki in the Sumerian era, he had one symbol which is the gushing pot from which 5 lines of water flow from both the right and left sides, and several symbols of the Semitic correspondent, Ea, appeared, including creatures such as fish, goat, and lamb, and a horned temple platform, and a turtle, and a lamb's leg. And the fish was an old animal indicating him, and most of his sacrifices were from fish, and therefore his priestly attire, especially in the Babylonian and Assyrian eras, was a long cloak from the head to the feet, which is a fish body with all its details. And the god Enki, unlike Anu and Enlil, is a friend of humans and their creator and savior, as he saved the human race from the flood that the Council of Great Gods decided. Enki entrusted Zyudsudra, the wise human, with the making of the ark. Enki's most important role in daily life is to expel demons, as the Ashibo priests in particular relied on him in the spells of exorcising demons, and they consider him the god of white magic who assists them in such matters. As for his titles, they are the Creator, Lord of the Bundle of Reeds, the God with the big open ear, the shiny water eye, the Lord of Wisdom, the Lord of Spells. Enki fathered 4 types of divine lineages, which are the lineages of plant gods, animal gods, human, the wheat god, and gods of civilization and construction. The water and wisdom god Enki appears in Sumerian mythology as a playful deity in his youth, involved in multiple relationships. As much as he is known for his intelligence and wisdom, he is the water god who would be the supreme medical lord. Water is the first element of life and the oldest substance that existed before the universe's details emerged, and from it, humans were created. The god Enki, a descendant of Apsu, the ancient aquatic deity about whom we know little in Sumerian theology and mythology, is accompanied by his consort Ninhursag, the mother goddess and earth goddess. The myth of Enki and Ninhursag in Dilmun tells us of successive theogonic processes that occurred early in creation and formation, where the gods still lived in paradise, still stumbled upon their mistakes or sins, and humans were not yet created. The legend begins with the description of Dilmun, where the god Enki and the goddess Ninhursag settled. In this land, there was no evil, ugliness, old age, or disease. Everything was abundant except for fresh river water, which was necessary to fertilize the land. The gods requested Enki to provide this water. Enki, in turn, asked Utu, the sun god, for assistance in bringing fresh water to that land. Utu complied, and springs and wells filled with fresh water erupted, making Dilmun's land fertile. The Sumerian tablets describe how Enki opened water channels and filled them with water from his phallus. He flooded the reed beds, tearing apart the covering that concealed the earth's womb. Enki then declared that no one but him could pass through these marshes. He divided the waters in the name of An, and for the goddess who lay in the marshes and extended herself across them, Enki dedicated his semen and poured it into Ninhursag's womb. After 9 days, equivalent to 9 months, Ninhursag gave birth effortlessly and without pain to Ninsar, the lady of edible plants. As Ninsar grew up, and her father Enki saw her strolling along the marsh, he was taken by her beauty and lay with her, thus beginning Enki's transgressions. He married his daughter, and she bore him Ninima, the lady of the fibrous plants. The incident repeated with his granddaughter, who bore him Utu, the goddess of weaving. At this point, the goddess Ninhursag, Enki's wife, intervened. She warned Utu not to succumb to Enki's temptations unless he brought her fruit as a gift. He did so, and a series of deities were born from Enki: the green plant, the fibrous plant, the dyes, the weaving. Enki, a deity, mated with the goddess Utu, leading to the creation of 8 plant types from his semen, which Ninhursag scattered on earth. Enki gave each plant a name and interpreted their essential nature, with the process turning them into sacred vegetation. Thus, Enki's reckless act of eating from these forbidden plants caused Ninhursag's anger and her departure from civilization after she turned her life-giving gaze away from him, leaving Enki facing death. The assembly of gods mourned, but a fox went to Enlil and asked for a reward in exchange for convincing Ninhursag to return. The fox succeeded in convincing Ninhursag to return to Enki, who had become ill with 8 diseases due to eating the previously mentioned forbidden poisonous plants. Ninhursag began to examine him and asked what pained him. He listed 8 areas: the head, the hair, the nose, the mouth, the throat, the arm, the rib, the shoulders. Goddess Ninhursag then created 8 deities for each disease in the aforementioned parts, and thus the god Enki was healed of his ailments. He then determined the fates of these 8 deities for other tasks, in addition to their medical or healing roles. The Sumerian mythological heritage is filled with various myths explaining the creation of humans. There are several Sumerian myths detailing the creation of humanity, each attributing human origin and formation to different sources: clay and water, plant origin, animal origin, and divine origin, the word. In this video, we will discuss the first and most famous of these Sumerian myths of human creation, the myth of clay and water, whose main characters are Enki, Namu, Ninma, and the clay of the Apsu. This well-known myth indicates that after the universe and the gods were created, the gods had to work and provide themselves with food and drink. The younger working gods reached a point of exhaustion and suffering, and they went to complain to the god Enki, who was sleeping in the depths of the waters but did not receive them. Instead, the goddess Namu, the first Sumerian mother goddess who bore all the gods, told her son Enki about their complaint, saying, "My son, get out of your bedroom, for you, with your wisdom, understand all crafts. Create a substitute for the gods so they can bear the workload instead of them." Enki, upon hearing his mother Namu's words, rose and entered the sacred hall. He thought deeply, striking his thigh, for he was the wise one who understood everything and all crafts. Enki then created the human's chest and infused his creation, the human, with something of his wisdom. He called upon his mother Namu and said, "Mother, the creature that I have created, bind to it the work of the gods. After you mix the clay taken from the waters of the Apsu, you must shape the clay and create the creature, human, and may the goddess Ninma assist you." After deciding the shape and nature of humans and imparting some of his wisdom into them, Enki left the matter of their birth to Ninma and the 7 birth goddesses who assisted her. From this description, humans appeared, and Enki decided their shape, nature, and soul, then placed them in the womb of one of the goddesses, probably Ninma, to be born with the assistance of the birth goddesses. Namu then determined their fate, while Ninma decided the work they would do for the gods. Enki then held a celebration for the gods to show them the birth of the new creature, human. The goddess Namu created the initial mold, and then the goddess Ninma took the clay from the waters of the Apsu, after she and Enki had drunk much wine, shaped it, and gave birth to it. It seems she created 6 types of humans, all suffering from some form of weakness or illness, but Enki decided a fate for each of them. These early humans were: 1. The stiff-jointed human. Enki made him serve the king. 2. The blind human. Enki made him a singer and musician for the king. 3. The crippled human. Enki made him beautiful and extraordinary. 4. The man who couldn't retain his semen. Enki washed him and he was healed. 5. The barren woman. Enki assigned her to the harem. 6. The human without genitals. Enki named him Nippur eunuch to serve the king. Enki then created a human creature with the help of Ninma, and this creature was called Umul. Umul was barely able to breathe, his ribs were shaking, his lungs were afflicted, his heart was troubled, and his intestines were affected. His head hung down, and he could not put bread in his mouth. His spine and head were twisted, his shoulders collapsed, and his legs could not walk. It seems Enki deliberately created such a deformed human to embarrass Ninma and prove her inability, after he managed to determine the fate of 6 other primitive human types she created. Thus, he told her to manage this creature and assign it a fate and a means of living. Ninma then turned towards Umul and observed him. She approached and called him, but he could not respond. She offered him bread, but he could not eat it. He could not sit or stand, nor could he make himself a shelter or find food. Therefore Ninma responded to Enki, "What you have created here is neither alive nor dead. It is incapable of doing anything." Enki reminded Ninma how he had provided a means of living for the humans she created and assigned them a fate. Ninma justified her failure by explaining that she had left her city and temple due to an attack and had to take refuge in Enlil's temple in Nippur. However, her failure was evident. Enki then asked her to remove the incapable creature from her embrace, accept the creatures she created after he decided their fate, and celebrate his creative ability by singing for him and building a special temple for him. This myth illustrates Enki's ability to create ordinary, healthy humans without explaining the exact process, then shows how Ninma created 6 types of disabled humans, and how Enki assigned them roles and healed some of them. However, Ninma failed to help Enki's deliberately created disabled creature. This myth also suggests that the first humans were sick and physically flawed, and without Enki, they could not have survived. Additionally, it indicates that humans were created by Enki, but born by a goddess with the help of 7 birth goddesses. This is a significant indication that humans are considered children of the gods or goddesses, but weak and mortal, tasked with serving the gods and fulfilling their commands rather than living with them or sharing their attributes. This myth gives us a new counterfactual indication that Nippur preceded Eridu in existence, while it is established through the Sumerian king's legends that Eridu is the first of the 5 Sumerian cities before the flood. Additionally, scientific evidence has proven that Eridu is the first settled city in southern Iraq. Because Eridu is the home of the god Enki, and Nippur is the home of the god Enlil, we believe that this myth points to a religious priestly conflict that attempted to give Nippur importance and precedence over Eridu. This indicates a form of masculine coup and its centrality, as Enki did not strictly represent a masculine side, while Enlil completely represented that. Enki, on the other hand, signifies what remains of the mother goddess, as he was her son, husband, and heir. The myth begins with praise for the god Enki, and how he built his house of silver and lapis lazuli in his city Eridu, and it was decorated with gold. According to the myth in this part, the lord of the abyss, the king Enki, the lord who decrees the fates, built his house of silver and lapis lazuli. It's silver and lapis lazuli, like sparkling light. The father fashioned fittingly in the abyss, the creatures of bright countenance and wise, coming forth from the abyss, stood all about the Lord Nudimmud. The pure house be built, he adorned it with lapis lazuli. He ornamented it greatly with gold. In Eridu he built the house of the water bank. Its brickwork, word-uttering, advice-giving, it's like an ox roaring, the house of Enki, the oracles uttering. And thereafter he needs the blessing of the greatest god of Sumer, Enlil, who resides in Nippur. Therefore he prepares his boat for the journey and emerges from the waters of the Abzu, his abode. According to the myth in this part, Enki is now ready to proceed by boat to Nippur to obtain Enlil's blessing for his newly built city and temple. He therefore rises from the abyss. When Enki rises, the fish rise. The abyss stands in wonder. In the sea joy enters. Fear comes over the deep. Terror holds the exalted river. The Euphrates, the south wind lifts it in waves. And when the god Enki arrives at the city of Nippur, he finds a grand feast arranged for him by the god Enlil, who invited the gods, the Anunnaki, to celebrate the completion of Enki's house. Drinks are served, and the gods become intoxicated. Then, on this occasion, the god Enlil speaks, and from his words, it appears that he is the father of the god Enki. This is natural, as Enlil must become Enki's father to achieve absolute supremacy and to make Nippur the origin of Eridu, which is what the priests of Nippur accomplished, according to the myth in this part. And so Enki seats himself in his boat and first arrives in Eridu itself. Here he slaughters many oxen and sheep. He then proceeds to Nippur, where immediately upon his arrival he prepares all kinds of drinks for the gods, and especially for Enlil. Then, Enki in the shrine Nippur gives his father Enlil bread to eat. In the first place he seated An, the heaven god. Next to An he seated Enlil. Nintu he seated at the big side. The Anunnaki seated themselves one after the other. And so the gods feast and banquet until their hearts become good, and Enlil is ready to pronounce his blessing. Enlil says to the Anunnaki, "Ye great gods who are standing about, my son has built a house, the king Enki, Eridu, like a mountain, he has raised up from the earth. In a good place he has built it. Eridu, the clean place, where none may enter, the house built of silver, adorned with lapis lazuli, the house directed by the 7 lyre songs, given over to incantation, with pure songs. The abyss, the shrine of the goodness of Enki, befitting the divine. Decrees, Eridu, the pure house having been built. Enki, praise." Here ends the text of Enki's journey to Nippur. Inanna, queen of heaven and tutelary goddess of Uruk, was eager to enhance the welfare and prosperity of her city. She aimed to make Uruk the center of Sumerian civilization, thereby exalting her own name and fame. Determined to achieve this, she decided to visit Eridu, the ancient and venerable seat of Sumerian culture. In Eridu resided Enki, the Lord of Wisdom, who knows the very heart of the gods and dwells in the watery abyss known as the Abzu. Enki was in charge of all the divine decrees fundamental to civilization. Inanna believed that if she could obtain these decrees, by any means necessary, and bring them to Uruk, its glory, and her own, would be unmatched. As Inanna approached the Abzu of Eridu, Enki, undoubtedly charmed by her presence, called his messenger Isimud, and instructed him, "Come, my messenger Isimud, give ear to my instructions. A word I will say to thee, take my word. The maid all alone has directed her step to the Abzu. Inanna all alone has directed her step to the Abzu. Have the maid enter the Abzu of Eridu. Have Inanna enter the Abzu of Eridu. Give her to eat barley cake with butter. Pour for her cold water that freshens the heart. Give her to drink date wine in the face of the lion. At the pure table, the table of heaven, speak to Inanna words of greeting. Isimud obeyed his master's orders exactly, and Inanna and Enki sat down to feast. After their hearts had become happy with drink, Enki exclaimed, "O name of my power, O name of my power, to the pure Inanna, my daughter, I shall present lordship, godship, the tiara exalted and enduring, the throne of kingship." Pure Inanna accepted these gifts. Enki continued, "O name of my power, O name of my power, to the pure Inanna, my daughter, I shall present the exalted scepter, staffs, the exalted shrine, shepherdship, kingship." Pure Inanna took these gifts as well. Enki proceeded to present her with over 100 divine decrees that formed the basis of Sumerian civilization. These decrees included aspects such as lordship, godship, the exalted and enduring crown, the throne of kingship, the exalted scepter, the exalted shrine, shepherdship, kingship, numerous priestly offices, truth, descent into and ascent from the nether world, the standard, the flood, sexual intercourse and prostitution, the legal and libelous tongues, art, holy cult chambers, the hierodule of heaven, music, eldership, heroism, power, enmity, straightforwardness, destruction of cities, lamentation, rejoicing, falsehood, the rebel land, goodness and justice, various crafts, carpenter, metalworker, scribe, smith, leatherworker, mason, basket weaver, wisdom and understanding, purification, fear and outcry, kindling and consuming flames, weariness, the shout of victory, counsel, the troubled heart, judgment and decision, exuberance, and musical instruments. Inanna eagerly accepted the gifts offered by the drunken Enki, loaded them onto her boat of heaven, and set off for Uruk with her precious cargo. However, once the effects of the banquet wore off, Enki noticed that the divine decrees were missing. He turned to Isimud, who informed him that he, Enki, had presented them to Inanna. Upset, Enki regretted his generosity and decided to prevent the boat of heaven from reaching Uruk at all costs. He dispatched Isimud along with a group of sea monsters to intercept Inanna and her boat at the first of the 7 stopping stations between the Abzu of Eridu and Uruk. The sea monsters were to seize the boat of heaven from Inanna, but she herself was to be allowed to continue her journey to Uruk on foot. The passage detailing Enki's instructions to Isimud and Isimud's conversation with Inanna, who reproached her father Enki, is considered a classic poetic gem. The prince calls his messenger Isimud. Enki gives the word to the good name of heaven. "O my messenger Isimud, my good name of heaven." Isimud responds, "O my king Enki, here I stand, forever in praise." Enki inquires, "The boat of heaven, where now has it arrived?" Isimud replies, "At the Key Idal it has arrived." Enki instructs, "Go, and let the sea monsters seize it from her." Isimud does as instructed, overtakes the boat of heaven, and says to Inanna, "O my queen, thy father has sent me to thee. O Inanna, thy father has sent me to thee. Thy father, exalted is his speech. Enki, exalted is his utterance. His great words are not to go unheeded." Holy Inanna answers, "My father, what has he spoken to thee? What has he said to thee? His great words that are not to go unheeded. What pray are they?" Isimud responds, "My king has spoken to me. Enki has said to me, let Inanna go to Uruk, but thou, bring me back the boat of heaven to Eridu." Holy Inanna questions, "My father, why pray has he changed his word to me? Why has he broken his righteous word to me? Why has he defiled his great words to me? My father has spoken to me falsehood, has spoken to me falsehood. Falsely has he uttered the name of his power, the name of the Abzu." Barely had she uttered these words when the sea monsters seized the boat of heaven. Inanna then called to her messenger Ninshubur, "Come, my true messenger of Inanna, my messenger of favorable words, my carrier of true words, whose hand never falters, whose foot never falters, save the boat of heaven, and Inanna's presented decrees." Ninshubur complied, but Enki was persistent. He sent Isamud with various sea monsters to seize the boat of heaven at each of the 7 stopping points between Eridu and Uruk. Each time, Ninshubur came to Inanna's rescue. Finally, Inanna and her boat arrived safely at Uruk. Amidst jubilation and feasting by its delighted inhabitants, she unloaded the divine decrees one by one. The poem concludes with a speech addressed by Enki to Inanna. However, the text is significantly damaged, making it unclear whether his words were reconciliatory or retaliatory. This composition furnishes us with a detailed account of the activities of the water god Enki, the Sumerian god of wisdom, in organizing the earth and establishing what might be termed law and order upon it. The first part of our poem, approximately 100 lines, is too fragmentary for a reconstruction of its contents. When the poem becomes intelligible, Enki is decreeing the fate of Sumer. O Sumer, great land, of the lands of the universe, filled with steadfast brightness, the people from sunrise to sunset obedient to the divine decrees. Thy decrees are exalted decrees unreachable. Thy heart is profound, unfathomable. Thy is like heaven, untouchable. The king begotten adorns himself with lasting jewel. The Lord begotten sets crown on head. Thy Lord is an honored Lord. With An the king he sits in the shrine of heaven. Thy king is the great mountain, the father Enlil, like the father of all the lands. The Anunnaki, the great gods, in thy midst have taken up their dwelling place. In thy large groves they consume their food. O house of Sumer, may thy stables be many, may thy cows multiply, may thy sheepfolds be many, may thy sheep be myriad, may thy stand, may thy steadfast, lift hand to heaven, may the Anunnaki decree the fates in thy midst. Enki then goes to Ur, no doubt the capital of Sumer at the time our poem was composed, and decrees its fate. To Ur he came, Enki, king of the abyss, decrees the fate. O city, well supplied, washed by much water, firm standing ox, shrine of abundance of the land, knees opened, green like the mountain, Hasher forest, wide shade. Heroic, thy perfected decrees he has directed, the great mountain, Enlil, in the universe has uttered thy exalted name. O thou city whose fates have been decreed by Enki, O thou shrine Ur, neck to heaven mayest thou rise. Enki then comes to Meluha, the black mountain. Remarkably enough, Enki is almost as favorably disposed to this land as to Sumer itself. He blesses its trees and reeds, its oxen and birds, its silver and gold, its bronze and copper, its human beings. From Meluha, Enki goes to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. He fills them with sparkling water and appoints the god Enbelulu, the knower of rivers, in charge. Enki then fills the rivers with fishes and makes a deity described as the son of Kesh, responsible for them. He next turns to the sea, Persian Gulf, sets up its rules, and appoints the goddess Sirara in charge. Enki now calls to the winds and appoints over them the god Ishkur, who has charge of the silver lock of the heart of heaven. The plow and yoke, fields and vegetation, are next on the list. The plow and the yoke he directed, the great prince Enki caused the ox to. To the pure crops he roared, in the steadfast field he made grain grow. The Lord, the jewel and ornament of the plain, the farmer of Enlil, Enkimdu, him of the canals and ditches, Enki placed in their charge. The Lord called to the steadfast field, he caused it to produce much grain. Enki made it bring forth its small and large beans. Grains he heaped up for the granary. Enki added granary to granary. With Enlil he increases abundance in the land. Her whose head is, whose face is, the lady who, the might of the land, the steadfast support of the black-headed people, Ashnan, strength of all things, Enki placed in charge. Enki now turns to the pickaxe and the brick mold, and appoints the brick god Kabta in charge. He then directs the building implement Gugun, lays foundations and builds houses, and places them under the charge of Mushdama, the great builder of Enlil. He then fills the plain with plant and animal life, and places Sumugan, king of the mountain, in control. Finally, Enki builds stables and sheepfolds, fills them with milk and fat, and puts them in the care of the shepherd god Dumuzi. The rest of our text is destroyed, and we do not know how the poem ends. The myth of Lahar, the cattle god, and his sister Ashnan, the grain goddess, offers a fascinating insight into Sumerian mythology, echoing themes found in the Near Eastern Cain-Abel motif. Created on the sacred hill by Enki, and with their destinies shaped by Enlil, Lahar and Ashnan were brought into existence to provide the Anunnaki, the children and followers of the heaven god An, with essential sustenance and clothing. However, the Anunnaki could not effectively utilize their gifts, leading to the creation of humans to fulfill this need. Initially, humans were portrayed as beings who roamed and consumed like animals, devoid of clothing, reflecting their primal and unrefined state. This view underscores the Sumerian belief in the early human condition, much akin to sheep, underscoring a humble and rudimentary existence. As Lahar and Ashnan's contributions of cattle and grain grew, they brought immense prosperity to the assembly of gods. Yet their success bred conflict, as the siblings indulged in wine and quarreled over their fields and produce, each vying for superiority. This discord necessitated the intervention of Enlil and Enki, who ultimately resolved the dispute by declaring Ashnan, the goddess of grain and agriculture, as superior to Lahar, the god of cattle. The myth highlights the essential role humans played in bridging the gap between divine gifts and their practical application. Humans were created to utilize the bounty of Lahar and Ashnan effectively, transforming their primal existence into a more structured and purposeful life, capable of managing agriculture and livestock. This narrative not only underscores the significance of human creation, but also illustrates the evolution from a simple, animal-like existence to a more developed state, vital for sustaining the divine order. In essence, the tale of Lahar and Ashnan encapsulates the Sumerian worldview on the creation and purpose of humanity, highlighting their pivotal role in ensuring the sustenance and prosperity of the gods through the effective management of cattle and grain. The passage following the introduction is another poetic gem. It describes the descent of Lahar and Ashnan from heaven to earth and the cultural benefits which they bestow on mankind. In those days, Enki says to Enlil, "Father Enlil, Lahar and Ashnan, they who have been created in the Dulcug, let us cause them to descend from the Dulcug." At the pure word of Enki and Enlil, Lahar and Ashnan descended from the Dulcug. For Lahar, they, Enlil and Enki, set up the sheepfold, plants, herbs, and they present to him. For Ashnan, they establish a house, plow and yoke they present to her. Lahar, standing in his sheepfold, is a shepherd increasing the bounty of the sheepfold. Ashnan, standing among the crops, is a maid kindly and bountiful. Abundance of heaven, Lahar and Ashnan caused to appear. In the assembly, they brought abundance. In the land, they brought the breath of life. The decrees of the god they direct. The contents of the warehouses they multiply. The storehouses they fill full. In the house of the poor, hugging the dust, entering they bring abundance. The pair of them, wherever they stand, bring heavy increase into the house. The place where they stand they sate, the place where they sit they supply. They made good the heart of An and Enlil. But then Lahar and Ashnan drank much wine, and so they began to quarrel in the farms and fields. In the arguments which ensued, each deity extolled its achievements and belittled those of its opponent. Finally, Enlil and Enki intervened, but the end of the poem which contains their decision is still wanting.